everyone, Davey, Fit and Healthy Forever. I'm doing a video today on your salt intake. Now, this isn't something I give a lot of thought to until I've actually researched it, and I'm sure most people haven't. I'm not sure how much of this would surprise you, but it may get you thinking of how you would change your salt intake to complement your health. So if you're the sort of person who believes that high salt intake provokes thirst and contributes to high blood pressure, heart disease, which most of us did. I did until this, and you're probably wrong. And by the end of this video, you'll see why. Studies have consistently failed to support either of these notions, so it's actually shown the opposite to be true. Eating lots of salt will not make you thirsty or cause greater urine output. A study involving Russian cosmonauts reveals eating more salt actually lowered their thirst, yet increased hunger, surprisingly. Now, recent animal researchers have supported this because the Russian cosmonaut one was quite a few years ago. Recent animal studies have supported this, showing high salt diets resulted in increased metabolism, forcing the animals to eat 25% more calories just to maintain their weight. Now, I can relate to that at the minute because I probably eat 3,000 calories a day just to maintain 13 stone. If I drop 200 or 300 below that, I start to drop weight. May have something to do with salt intake, I'm not sure, but I've adjusted mine accordingly. Salt intake increases what they call glucocorticoid hormones, which rise, causing greater water availability and increased fat breakdown. Now, these things that happen in the body like this are energy intensive, so they result in more hunger. High salt intake will not increase the risk of heart disease. I'll say that again, will not increase your risk of heart disease. However, having the correct potassium to sodium balance influences the risk of high blood pressure and heart disease to a far greater extent than sodium alone, which I'll go through in a minute. The problem is processed foods are typically low in potassium and high in sodium. Studies suggest a low salt diet can actually worsen cardio disease and raise rather than lower the risk for early death among patients who are high risk of heart disease. Now, this goes against the opposite to what I've ever thought, but bear with me. About 71% of your salt intake comes from processed foods. So to me, this is the kicker. If you avoid processed foods, you have virtually no risk of consuming too much salt. Now that makes so much sense. Anything processed in tins, ready-to-eat meals that you get from Iceland or somewhere, McDonald's, they're just loaded with sodium. So if your diet consists of the majority of that sort of thing, you will have a high salt intake, and it will affect some of these diseases. But if you try to eliminate processed foods, you will eliminate high salt intake. So there is virtually no risk, if you do that, of taking in too much salt. Eating a whole food and balanced diet will also ensure a better sodium to potassium ratio. Now this is important, I'll cover this in a sec. When lowering salt in processed foods, manufacturers compensated that by adding monosodium glutamate instead. It's a flavouring enhancer. It's linked to obesity, headaches, eye damage, fatigue and depression. It's pretty bizarre our understanding of salt is this poor, and I'm in that category, I'm guilty of that. Never considering that different salts affect and different intakes of salt affect. Never dreamed of it. That's what happens when you assume that science has got it all covered. Science evolves. I can relate to this again because my diet, training, rest and recuperation, I thought I'd got it sussed for years and years and years. Science is coming out now, and I do everything by research these days. So everything I'm telling you is science-backed, research-backed, and I don't change anything in my diet or exercise or anything in my life unless it's science-backed. And I cross-reference with different doctors, different scientists, before I bring it to you. So what I'm telling you, when I say to you, come back and tell me if you think this is all cock and bull, that's fine, prove it to me, because I've cross-referenced these things before I put them on video. Dr. Mark Zidell, a nephrologist at Harvard Medical School, wrote an editorial stating, and it quotes, "People do what camels do. A camel travelling through the desert that has no water to drink gets water by breaking down the fat in its hump." Strange, I never knew that myself. Dr. Melanie Hoenig, another nephrologist from Harvard Medical School, said we do not really understand the effects of sodium chloride in the body. Sodium chloride is basic salt. Just as a side note, a nephrologist is a medical doctor who specialises in kidney care and treating kidney diseases. While salt got a bad rap, suspected of increasing your risk of heart disease and high blood pressure, research shows the real key to relaxing your arteries and reducing your risk of blood pressure is actually sodium to potassium ratio, not sodium intake alone. So high sodium alone doesn't really have a massive effect. But if you were to, as I said earlier, to lower your processed food intake dramatically, there is virtually no risk of a high salt intake. Even when you put salt, I put salt on my food every day. No risk of a salt high intake if you reduce or eliminate processed foods from your diet. Potassium is a naturally occurring mineral in your body and it's vital for optimal health. Okay, so you need potassium, definitely need it. It, as well as health, normal functioning of the body. Now, most of your potassium resides, most of the potassium resides inside your cells, where sodium resides outside your cells, but they do work synergistically. Now, potassium works to relax the walls of your arteries, keeping muscles from cramping, and lowers blood pressure. A general recommendation is you take in between 4.7 and 6 grams of potassium a day. That is a lot of potassium, but I'll go through, if you decide to supplement with it, I'll go through in a minute what you're looking for. Now, if you said you take in 6 grams of potassium a day, for argument's sake, if you take a fifth of that, that should be salt intake. So a fifth of your total potassium should be what your salt intake is. If you take 6 grams a day of potassium, your salt should be 1.2 grams. Now, that sounds like a lot of salt. It probably is if you're not getting it through processed foods, if you're getting it through adding it to your diet, through putting it in your meals. It's a lot of salt. But that's the ratio, 5 to 1. So this information's come from the USA. They generally take in twice as much sodium as potassium at the moment, which is ever likely they've got problems with cardiovascular disease and heart disease and blood pressure. Taking in twice as much sodium as potassium. Absolutely the wrong way around. An imbalance of this nature can lead to high blood pressure, contribute to kidney stones, memory decline, cataracts, stomach ulcers, erectile dysfunction and stomach cancers. These are some of the things it's known to be related to. This type of ratio, twice as much salt as potassium. It cannot continue. So it would make sense to make the public aware that if they eat a high quality diet rich in potassium, rather than reduce sodium, it's a much better strategy. Now, you go to the doctor sometimes, they'll say you must reduce your salt intake, your blood pressure's high. Nothing to do with it. It's more so the processed food diet that you're eating. And if you look at the theme of all these videos I'm doing, your diet is massively, massively important. It all comes back to diet, whether it be through cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, diabetes, everything. It comes back to diet. You've got to get your diet in order, because the way the nation's going at the moment, there won't be enough in the coffers to keep admitting people to hospitals. So Results have been found in several studies, leading researchers to recommend dietary choices that boost potassium levels rather than just reduce your salt intake. If you reduce your salt intake too low, that is more detrimental than high salt intake, because salt is you need it for health. You need it for several. I've got a paper here in a minute. I'll show you some of the things that you need salt for, that chemical reactions in your body. For instance, found in fruit and veggies, potassium citrate or potassium malate, while supplements, if you buy supplements, they're often potassium chloride. Now, from my understanding, there's nothing wrong with any of them, but you need a balance. So if you're going to, don't just take a supplement instead of getting your veggies and your salads in. Try do both and get the best of both worlds. Green veg juice is an excellent way to get optimum amounts of nutrients, including potassium. Potassium-rich foods are things like Swiss chard, lima beans, avocado, dried apricots, baked potatoes, winter squash, spinach, beets, and all leafy greens. So your cabbage, your green beans, your cauliflower, broccoli, all got potassium. But mark my words, it's very difficult to get 6 grams a day. Very difficult, I can tell you from experience. Right, coming to salt. When using salt, make sure it's unrefined and minimally processed. Himalayan salt, pink salt, which is what I've been using recently, is rich in naturally occurring trace minerals needed for healthy bones, fluid balance, overall health. Salt is a nutritional goldmine if you consume the right kind. It provides 2 elements, sodium and chloride. These are essential for life. I repeat that, they are essential for life. Your body cannot make these elements on its own. It must get them from the diet. Just think about that. You must get them from your diet. So if you look at natural salt, it's typically 84% sodium chloride with 16% naturally occurring trace minerals, including silicon, phosphorus and vanadium. Now, processed salt, which is your regular table salt that you buy, that is 97% sodium chloride. The rest is man-made chemicals such as moisture absorbents and flow agents, and a small amount of iodine may be added. That's a huge difference. You need these trace minerals. You need them. So 84% sodium chloride with 16% trace minerals is a big, big difference than 97% sodium chloride with no trace minerals. So besides the basic differences in nutritional content, processing with everything, not just salt, radically alters the chemical structure of salt. And that's the same with anything that's processed. It's radically altering the chemical structure. So if you do need salt, you do need salt for optimal health. Not just any salt will do. Your body needs natural, unprocessed salt with no added chemicals. Now, this isn't difficult. I went in Holland & Barrett and you can get organic Himalayan pink salt for £2 for a bottle. Now, your health's worth it. It's worth it. If you have to pay double that, it's worth it. It doesn't have to be organic, but if you can, for £2, I mean, how long is a salt salad going to last you? Weeks and weeks and weeks, probably, for how much you have on meals. There's 2 of us using it and it lasts for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, just as a side note from earlier, when you're talking about it affecting blood pressure, the systolic blood pressure is the top number, and that is the pressure in your arteries when your heart is contracting. So when your heart contracts, it's the pressure. So that if the top number is 120, it's 120 beats of pressure each time it's contracting. The diastolic, which is the lower one, the lower number, that is the number, refers to the pressure when your heart is relaxing. So your heart is, when it's pumping, it's contracting, relaxing. Like any muscle, contract and relax. So it's contract, relax, contract, relax. So what the 2 numbers mean. What they say is between 120 and 140 over 80 to 90, these are what's called normal. Now, I'll do something else on blood pressure later, because this followed on to more research which says sometimes, not always, but sometimes your blood pressure is a false reading in the way that they say, oh, it shouldn't go over 140. If you go and exercise in the gym, it'll go up to 200, 250, 300. And so are they saying you shouldn't exercise because of that? No, but this is for another day. Lastly, I wanted to go over some of the biological processes for which natural salt is crucial. Being a major component of blood plasma, lymphatic fluid, extracellular fluid, and even amniotic fluid, it carries nutrients in and out of cells and helps maintain your acid balance base. Both sodium and chloride are both necessary for the firing of neurons. So when your brain is telling your muscles what to do, it fires neurons which alert it to what it's telling it to do. That doesn't work optimally without adequate salt and potassium. Maintaining and regulating blood pressure. So you've got to have the right ratio. So sometimes when they're telling you your blood pressure is high, if you get the ratio to potassium and salt correct, that could possibly, with a healthy diet, bring it down without medication. Because the first thing allopathic doctors, which is your general practitioner, do, oh, your blood pressure's high, I need you to take these statin drugs. It's not always the way. Again, statin drugs probably have a place, but they have to be, for me, a very, very, very last resort when you've exhausted everything else. You could go on a statin drug for blood pressure, stabilise it, and then work at getting your diet and your exercise in order, and then gradually come off the medication with your doctor's help, always with your doctor's help. Doctors shouldn't be putting you on statins and saying, that's it forever. If you do the right things, it isn't it forever. But as I've said before, statin drugs, any type of drugs and medication, that's where medical associations make their money. So they're going to tell you that. Other things, helping your brain communicate with your muscles so that you can move on demand via sodium, potassium, ion exchange, which again is your neurons. Supporting the function of adrenal glands, which produce dozens of vital hormones. These are the main things that your salt potassium intake would need to be correct to support. So, as I've always said, the things that I'm bringing to you, I've researched these, I've tried them myself. I've only changed my salt intake for 2 weeks now, so I can't say I've noticed a massive difference, but in saying that, I believe I had most things in pretty good order anyway, so I wouldn't expect a dramatic change in anything. But these little things, no one thing you do will normally have a dramatic effect. It's all little things combined together. Getting your exercise, your diet, your rest and recovery, making sure you get adequate potassium and salt in the right ratios, making sure you get your multivitamins in and your vitamin C in it. Get all these things in order. Please don't think to yourself, oh, that's expensive. Your health is worth it. You can do it on a budget. I've done it on a budget for years and still am. I'm retired now, so I can't just splash out money on anything that I want. I research it. If it's worth my health, it's worth my money. So again, as always, rant over. Please take this into consideration. It's not difficult to implement by cutting down or eliminating processed foods and just making sure you get your potassium in and changing the salt. You know, I mean, you might pay a few pence for a normal table salt tub, but Himalayan pig salt, £2, it'll last you weeks, months. You know, is it difficult? I don't think so. So please look after your health. I just want people to be fit and healthy for however long they're on this planet. Thanks for listening in. As always, stay fit and healthy forever. Like and subscribe and tell all your friends. I'm getting a few more comebacks now where people are asking questions, saying, oh, I like your videos. It's slow, but I never did it to make a big impact. But I would like people to look at these. If you look at it and do your own research and dismiss it, that's fine. That's on you. But give it a chance, because what I'm telling you is research backed and it's based on scientific research. So please do the right things for your body. You're worth it. As they say, as L'Oreal say, you're worth it, and you are with this. So thanks again for listening in. Till the next video, stay fit and healthy forever. Thank you.